It is Ray Ellin, ladies and gentlemen, live on. We're in a dorm room.
Yes, we are.
And our host is
of the room.
Renee.
Yeah, this is
Renee. This is Renee's room, and Renee needs to see somebody for his OCD because this is the cleanest dorm I've ever seen.
Yeah, Renee, how about some posters on the wall and maybe some Coke on the dresser? What about that?
Yeah, where are the posters?
We're in Pepsi area. That's what you meant, right?
That's what
You
I
know
meant.
the headquarters for Pepsi are
That's
right
what I
across
mean.
the
We're
way.
literally in the Pepsi area.
I didn't know that.
Right
Why,
there.
why did they choose that?
It's a lot of space out here, a lot of land out
So
here.
we are really honored to have you. I've been studying you all day, and then you and I had those 2 phone conversations, and I feel like we're brothers. But we need your advice. But I want you to talk about your show that you're doing right now. I want to get that right out.
The show, this show, it's season 2 of This Week at the Comedy Cellar on Comedy Central. It airs Friday nights at 11 o'clock. It's a weekly topical stand-up show. I am an executive producer on the show, and I perform as well. You know, there's a lot of comics that are on the show. It's a great mix, and it's super fun. It's great fun. So we filmed last night was the first night of taping for season 2. So every Friday, new episode comes out. I'm sorry?
Video? You're taping video or audio?
It's video, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's on the air on Comedy Central.
Have you not
11
seen
p.m.
it?
I don't know.
Very wonderful.
We cut cable. I'm not sure if I get Comedy Central right
You
now.
can watch it online if you go to comedycentral.com. By the way, I still can't get over my head. This guy, Renee, he's got stacks of napkins on the shelves. What do you do in this room? What liquids are pouring out? You have 7. You went to Costco and just bought tons of napkins.
Yeah, there's something wrong in this room.
Something weird going on.
In defense of Renee, we treat his room a little bit like storage. We run a. Did you look at the camp? We're taking to the camp. We run a summer camp here.
Ah, okay.
We're not in
I gotcha.
college.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure how old you look. You look like you could be 20. I don't know.
I am about 20.
And what is?
You look like you'd be 49.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got my age.
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
And you look like you could be 26, 28.
Oh,
no,
you charmer.
You don't know, but you look in your 30s.
You're trying to get me over onto that bed over there.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
We can leave if you need.
No, we're good.
Okay.
We're good. Anyhow, do you want to play the intro just to fuck it around? Now, you've known me for 3 minutes. Is this me?
Could be one of your many dimensions.
Which dimension and how much pot have I had?
The cool, easy listening, slow jazz
It's
Jeffrey
not hot
Tambor.
music.
I'm not. There's nothing cool about me, is there?
Not really.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're George Bluth, you're kind of cool. George Bluth has a coolness about him.
I would say Oscar has more of a. Anyway,
I thought Jeffrey Brooks was cool.
you know Jeffrey Brooks?
Yes, I do.
Stop that music. How the fuck do you know Jeffrey P. Brooks?
I grew up on reruns of every show imaginable. So Three's Company and The Ropers and everything from that era I've seen. Sure. You jumped off the screen. That was the first thing I saw you on. Like, boom. You're like, wow. I mean, it was, and that's why I think you've had so much success, because from right out of the gate, you're like, oh, this guy.
If you go back and look at that and stop the tape and look into my eyes, there was a mixture of shame and terror.
Really?
I had never performed in front of a group of 200 people who get off a bus. And you and you play to them, and you think they're the audience, and they're not. There's millions of people at home, and I had just gotten through with And Justice for All, so I was doing in the same season And Justice for All and The Roper, so I couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on. How old were you? And I'm ready. Let me take
the first time when I watched that, I saw a rerun, so I was probably 10.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks for coming in.
No, happy to be here. But by the way, Injustice for All, I saw that came out I think before Three's Company, but I saw it later.
Yeah.
And I remember that very well because I think a character named Ralph Agee hung himself. Maybe somebody hung himself in the movie.
Tom Waits.
Tom Waits did. I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I ever saw anything like that.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have been watching the movie.
Yeah, I forgot about that subplot. The kid, the young kid hangs himself. Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Well, that's
okay.
upbeat.
Well, anyway, listen.
Yeah, let's talk more about murder on film.
Anyway, I'm a huge fan. I've been listening to your stuff, and as I said to you on the phone, we do pre-screeners and phones, and what do you want to talk about? And you and I felt we could talk forever, and that we're brothers and very much alike. But you're so good, and this is a real question. Because we were just talking about it, and we always talk a little bit before the guest comes on to just, what's on our minds. We're clunky at best. How do you get over the clunky, or should we keep the clunky?
Keep the clunky. I think clunky is authentic. It's fun. It's real. I think it's great. I mean, if you're stumbling for 2 hours, then eventually a listener's going to be like, what the fuck is this? But I think clunky is good.
Yeah, I just listened to one this morning. I did not know there were 60,000 of them, by the way, when Monsieur came over and said, would you like to do a podcast? And so I've been listening to them. Most of them, kind of some snoozers out
Awful.
there.
Agony. Some of it is just totally brutal.
There's an acting one that goes, and when you go,
yeah, sure,
yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah,
but every once in a while, I'm trying to think of what's I listen to sports podcasts. I like Game of Thrones podcasts because I'm a huge Game of Thrones. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
No, but my wife is on season 7 and she's starting to grieve.
Yeah,
is there a season 7? Maybe that's why she's grieving.
It ends with season 8. And,
she's on season 7 and she's already starting to grieve.
I went into a mourning period when that thing ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
I just don't, I'm so far behind, I don't know where to start.
Season 1, episode 1. That's a good place to begin. I have to tell you, I've never been into fantasy shows
No,
with
neither
dragons.
have I.
None. I hate that shit.
Me too.
And this show I watched, I had a break. There were 6 seasons. It was 6 seasons in, and I watched all 60 episodes in 8 days. I couldn't get enough. And in the middle of my binge, I took a break. I was 5 days in, 44 episodes, and I went downstairs to the restaurant in my building, and sitting in the restaurant at the bar was Peter Dinklage, Tyrion Lannister. In the middle of my binge, I thought I was hallucinating. I was so fucking excited. He was the best character on the best show, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, because I remember I said I need to shave and shower and have a normal meal. So that's what because I could not leave my TV, and there he was just sitting there. So that was kind of.
Did you go up to him?
I did, and I never want to bother anybody.
Yeah, me
and I
too.
rarely do. I mean, I don't know who was the last person you went over to kind of say, "Hey, I like your work" or this or that, or I mean.
Oh, there was somebody. I think it was that fellow who does the weekly thing on HBO, British.
John Oliver.
Yeah, I had to say hello to him.
Yeah, he's great.
He's great.
But I do it I almost never do it. If I saw you in a bar,
Would you come over?
Yeah, I would. I'd wait until whoever you're with, like maybe left the table. I don't want.
There's no one at the table.
Just dining alone.
Oh yeah.
I was terrified to talk to you.
That's the name of the book. There's no one at the table.
What book?
The book I'm going to write now.
Okay.
There's no one at the table.
I like it. It's a good
Dining alone with Jeffrey Tambor.
I can picture the
And
cover
then just recipes.
for one.
So you say keep the lumps in and keep the thing. You're magnificent.
Oh, you're very kind.
Yeah, and you're just on a roll and
so far so good.
Yeah.
I'm always afraid to I don't know if you ever like this, but I'm always afraid to I never want to say to myself, "Oh, things are going great." 'Cause
Are you Jewish?
Yeah.
Oh well, there it is.
There it is. Yeah. Inevitably it's
They inject that.
They do.
There's a bris, and unbeknownst to most people, they then inject that sentence.
Yeah.
Underneath the penis.
I think it goes right in the hole.
Yeah, it's going. Yeah,
it's a wonderful image.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I go, just wait. My father's motto was, "Don't celebrate; they'll take it away from you." And he put that on the napkins and the dinnerware, and I follow. Yes, Dad. Yes, Dad. So I'm always waiting for the house to fall in.
And I see people though who seem to celebrate every victory, and they really seem to rejoice in every great thing that's going on in their world. And
just literally talking about it.
And it doesn't bother. It doesn't fuck them up. Things keep going great.
Yeah.
And I wish that I don't have that.
No, I have the worry.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
If you gave the genie, have you seen the new Aladdin?
I did actually.
I liked it.
I thought it was fun.
Why did they get on this guy?
Wait, the kid who played Aladdin?
Anything. They didn't say, well, it's not Robin Williams. Of course it's not Robin Williams.
Right.
It's not Robin Williams.
They gave shit to Will Smith for playing the genie.
But he did a wonderful job.
He did a great job because they're comparing him to Robin. And that's not fair.
It's not fair.
That's absurd.
And first of all, it's animated, so leave him alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
Do you have kids? Are you married?
No, not married. Kind of seeing somebody right now, but again, I don't want to say it's going too well because it'll screw it all up, and we'll break up by the end of the broadcast. But kind of seeing somebody, and who I met.
What is kind of seeing somebody?
Well, to quote her, Ray, I don't like labels. We're good friends, and we're having a nice time. And I'm like, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah, it's
whatever
fine.
works. But just somebody to hang out with and seem to get along.
And
with.
you live in the city?
Yeah, I do, in the village.
Oh,
yeah.
Because when the way I found you was through the auspices of the great Kathy Schaefer.
Oh, sure.
How do you know them?
So I was hosting this show called Late Net. It was like kind of like the Tonight Show for the internet, for lack of a better description. And I was at the one-person show. Richard Belzer's daughter.
I know Belzer.
Yeah, he's fun.
He's
fun guy.
Fun.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
And I met him that night. I didn't know him before. So what happened was Kathy Schaefer's friend Judy is a friend of my sister's. We all went to this thing.
That's who we talked to the other day.
You spoke to Judy?
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Okay, yeah, sure.
Judy Twersky.
Yeah.
She's great. She's great. She's a hoot. She's really cool.
She is really cool.
Yeah, she's fun. So I went to Belzer's thing there, and his daughter's one-woman show. And at this point, I think Gilbert Gottfried had been a guest on my show, and a couple other people. And then I guess Kathy and I hit it off.
I might be going on Gilbert's show. Should I go?
Oh, you should definitely do it.
Yeah?
Totally. And let me know when you're going to be there. I saw him last night at the Comedy Cellar.
Yeah?
He's going to do our show. We're going to shoot him on Wednesday night.
Oh.
Yeah, he was great. When we had him on last time, he did a roast of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh my
and
God.
On Wednesday, he'll probably be doing a roast of Jeffrey Epstein, which will be phenomenal. If you guys want to come,
Oh my God.
Yeah, it'll be.
He's fearless.
He totally is.
He's just fearless. Always has been.
And he's one of a kind.
And he went through his rough spots.
Yes.
He was the butt of many, many, many jokes.
Yep.
But this guy, he's got ganas. He's got balls, and he's fearless. And now he, like you, has a great podcast.
Yeah, he's his thing is. I also love it because he just knows so much about, like, when I watch someone like Dick Van Dyke, for example, like I can't even articulate. I don't know who in present day is like that. I mean, it's amazing.
There was a person I walked up to. You asked me. Who asked me? The last person I walked up to and said,
That was us just about 5 minutes ago.
Oh, thank you. And I was sitting here. Dick Van Dyke. I was speechless. It was interesting. It was doing the Penguin movie, the Jim Carrey Penguin movie that I was in somehow, and Dick Van Dyke was sitting there and he was alone. People didn't know who he was.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really got to play with your head, where at one point in your
Wait,
life.
can I rephrase that?
Sure.
There were younger people
Yeah, I was gonna say.
that they didn't know.
Right.
Right, that's it. And I meant no disrespect, because he's, of course, an icon.
Sure.
And I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I remember thinking about with like Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney, I guess in the 30s, was the most famous person in the world.
A god, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when he's an older man, like no one really knows.
Is Mickey Rooney alive?
No.
Oh, I think he passed away.
Oh.
I remember Dana Carvey used to do spoof him on SNL. It was very funny. It was good.
Yeah.
I used to be the biggest star in the world, and it was good. But that's really, I mean, I guess you just have to enjoy it while you have it, right? I mean, that's it. What else
We're
can you
just
do?
talking about this. This was literally my friend Rip Torn passed away.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And thank you. And for some reason, I wasn't as close to Rip as I was to Gary. Gary was, and I were very close. But I was a huge admirer of Rip and really loved him, and I learned so much from him. And it hit me right across the head. I just kind of went, "Hey, TikTok, motherfucker! This thing is, you better pay attention."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, I just killed the whole interview.
Not at all. Not at all. You know what? We had in the comedy community, we had 1 year where like 3 different comics in their 40s all passed away.
Who?
This was a few years ago. Mike DiStefano and Greg Giraldo and Patrice O'Neill.
Greg Giraldo?
Yeah. That was about, this must be 6-7 years now.
Did you know Kinniston?
No, I saw him when I was in high school. I went to watch him live in Boston, but I never met him before.
How was his show?
It was great.
Yeah,
It was
off the
great.
wall,
like
right?
nothing you'd ever seen before.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
great.
That's what. Do you do stand up?
I do. I performed last night. I did 2 shows. yeah. It was great. It was fun. I love it. Stand up to me is sort of like the constant. You eat, you sleep, you breathe. And
Do you ever come out and just have your legal pad and try out your material?
Yes.
You do that.
Sure. Yeah.
I love those.
Typically, I don't do it on a Friday or Saturday, but on a random night, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
With Shandling, somebody gave me, when I was 15 years old, somebody took a mini cassette recorder and they made a bootleg of him performing. It was him and Joan Rivers in Vegas. So I still have this mini audio cassette, and it's unbelievable.
What's unbelievable about it?
His set is so fucking great. Shandling.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. What was one of the, this girl got mad when I blew in her ear. I don't know why. I mean, the straw was only this big. And
there's that one of his go-to. I'm not lonely at night because I shaved one of my legs, and I learned so much from him. I went to when I was cast as Hank, I went to the Tonight Show with him, and I said, no, I don't want to sit backstage. I want to sit up there and I want to watch you. And he went on, and I learned a lot real fast because Mr. Carson and Ed McMahon, they didn't talk that much, and they were in the dark. And as soon as they did the open monologue, it was as far away as you and I are to each other right now. And you don't get that in the camera. And I went, oh, that's odd. And, Miss McMahon was going, ha, 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 hey, and then they went to commercial, and the lights went black, and they were like 2 dromedary camels that just walked up to their seat in total silence. And I went, oh. There was a big red light that went on. Then Gary was the first guest. And he came out. And Gary, I love you wherever you are. If you're listening to this, I say this with total love. His first act didn't go well. And he was missing. And then they went to commercial. And then Gary went to his pocket. And he brought out his cards. And he reshuffled his card. I'm getting emotional saying this. He reshuffled his cards and put them in different order, and he came back and he killed.
Wow.
And I went, oh, it's all about reshuffling the cards. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that?
I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's true of comedy. I think it's true of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you just reshuffle the cards.
And I think from what I understand, 'cause I never met Gary. That's probably the one comic I really wish I could have met that I never did.
Or he would have loved you.
It would have been.
Have you ever seen the
documentary
DVD
that Judd did? Judd
yeah.
Apatow did.
Did you ever see the one where he surprised Ricky Gervais surprised him?
I did not see that.
It's not in the regular part. It's in the director's cut or whatever that special B is. He did a very interesting thing with Ricky Gervais. Gary had a hard and fast rule, no one in his house. And Ricky Gervais went in with his crew. And when Gary walked in, they were already inside. And Gary was not pleased. And he didn't make any bones about that he wasn't. And he threw Ricky Gervais, Ricky Gervais had that kind of, am I being fucked with? And I think both were going on because Gary loved real. And he loved you being off your feet. He was all about that. That's what he taught me. So he would have loved you, but he helped people.
That's what I heard. He was incredibly generous.
Yeah,
incredibly generous person.
Yeah,
a lot of people, a lot of comics in the middle of their set will say, "Hey now," I'm dead serious. There's a guy I worked with last night, and just randomly he'll just go, "Hey now." I don't know if you know that.
I do know that. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I do know our friend Howard Stern. Do you know this? They have a Hey Now there?
Yes.
Intro.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's me.
Right.
Yeah.
Taken 40 years ago in L.A. at 4 o'clock in the morning.
In his studio, you did it.
No, live outside, and he said, "Say goodbye." By the way, can you do one thing? Can you just say "Hey now"? Hey now. That's I did it once, and that's up. But now people think that's him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they think that he invented it, and he disowns it. I mean, he's great. By the way, his book is out, and it's fabulous. He worked on it. It's just different conversations. But back to you.
Wait, did "Hey Now" just fall out of your mouth when you first did it on the show?
No, it was scripted.
It was scripted.
It was scripted. And they're playing off Ed McMahon's Hiya.
Right.
Yeah.
What was that the most fun you did as an actor playing Hank Kingsley?
Yeah.
It was the most fun, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like it must have been a blast. Between working with Gary and Rip and yourself, I mean, that must have been so much fun.
My only regret is I didn't know enough at the time to say, guess what? This is it.
It's funny you say that. I was at an audition a few years ago for something stupid, and some fucking dumb thing that even if I booked it, I would have been furious. And sitting next to me with this guy, he looked kind of familiar to me, and it turns out it was Matthew Laborto from Little House on the Prairie. He played Albert.
God.
Now, my DVR is a big. I have Family Guy. I have Pardon the Interruption on ESPN, and I have Little House on the Prairie. I have a very.
Seriously, you still watch Little House?
Yes, I do. I love
I
taking
grew
the
up-
stroll
I grew
to
up,
Walnut Grove and just
Yeah.
getting sucked into that world. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I could tell you anything. My friend of mine sent me an autographed picture of Alison Arngrim, who played Nellie Olson. I was so excited. It's on my Instagram.
So like you want Michael Landon to be your father, kind of thing.
I think I would have been better off if Nels Olson was my dad, because I would have done well in the Mercantile. I can't do any field work.
Really
That's not my thing.
characters.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Is this the Will Gear one?
No, Will, that's the Waltons.
Yeah.
Oh.
Little House, Michael Landon.
What a shonda! How dare you?
Melissa
Gilbert.
Melissa Gilbert.
Yeah, her
Oh
brother.
yeah.
So Matthew Laborto plays Albert, and he's on the. And I said to him, and again, it's very funny what some people you can kind of get giddy around. Like, Peter Dinklage. I was like, ooh, it's I'm watching this thing for hours on end, and I meet Matthew Laborto, who did this thing years ago, and I was so nervous but I said, hey, I really like your work, and he's like, yeah, whatever, man, thanks. And I said, was it fun, working on Little House? He goes, I have to tell you something. He goes, anything anybody says about being a child actor, he says, is a crock of shit. He says, people treat you well, you're making money, people give you gifts, it's fun. He said, my only regret is that happened when I was 10 years old and not now. And he really seemed legitimately kind of bummed about that. It was 30 years earlier.
I grew up in San Francisco, and I went, oh, every city is like this. And then then life hits, and you go, every city is not like this. No. And then I thought, when I hit the Gary Shandling show, I just went, well, it was just magic. He taught me so much. He taught me a thing that I would go and watch him select his cards for the for the opening monologue, and he would have his hand over his mouth, and he would just point to each one. No laugh, no smirk, no nothing, and they would just arrange the cards. And I went, "You just got a comedy lesson, and you just learned about comedy." And that is what you see across the bar, when you go to the bar and you see all the comics lining up ready to go on. That face, for the most part. I followed it. I was going to make a documentary about Jeffrey years ago, a comedian. Jeffrey, you know any Jeffreys?
There's Jeffrey Gurian.
No.
That's not him. Jeffrey Epstein, not him. Jeff Bezos. No, he wasn't very funny. Successful, not funny. Who's a Jeffrey? Jeffrey.
Years ago. It was Roper's time.
Oh.
Yeah, it's before your time. But anyway, I followed him for a little bit, and I went, these are some miserable fucking people.
Yeah, there's a lot of it can be a horrible group. Some of the best people, some of the funniest people, and some of the most miserable fucking
Has it ever been
beings.
captured?
A little bit. There's been some documentaries that sort of,
But like AA meetings, it's never been captured on film.
No,
right?
no, I don't think so. But it is some of the most bunch of social misfits, and that's why a lot of times people like this woman that I'm kind of hanging out with.
Every iteration of this woman, you get further and further away from her.
By the end of the show, be someone I once met.
An ex-friend.
Yeah, it's an ex-buddy.
Why are you being so careful? Because this is not how you were on the phone.
Well, because if she hears this, I'm sure she. What are you talking about? We're not together. I don't want to fuck. I ruined the whole fucking relationship. It's done.
We can cut it if you want.
Nah, we'll leave whatever you want. I'm stealing those napkins on the way out.
What's her name?
We're gonna call her. We're gonna call her Tiffany.
Tiffany.
Sure.
Tiffers.
Tiffers.
Tiffers. Yeah. So we were talking about the misfits and the.
So she meets some of these people. She watches them perform, and then afterwards, she says, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." And they're so awkward and they were just so great and confident on stage. And it's I find it frustrating. I'm like, just fucking say hello. What's wrong with you, dude? Just be friendly.
Do you have a standard way of operating when you write a joke?
Not really. I find what works best is when I just...
I'm not being rude. I'm going to my notes about you. Go ahead.
No, man. When I basically just have an idea and I go on stage and just kind of just talk it out and see how the words kind of fall out.
Really?
Yeah, that typically works best for me. And then I will go back and look at what I did, and if it hit, great. Maybe it needs to be tweaked. But if it didn't work, and that happens obviously quite a bit with something brand new.
And your debut was when you were in your 6th grade?
Yeah, I performed at my 6th grade graduation when I was 11 years old.
Do you remember any of the jokes?
Not at all. None of it. I probably did half a Shandling's act. The first time I ever got a laugh, I do remember, I was about 3 years old, and it's nice talking to another Jew because you'll know what the hell I'm talking about. A lot of times I'm talking to people who have just no clue because they just don't know. They didn't grow up with, But I went to synagogue for the holiday Purim, and when you're a little kid, you dress up, So I was dressed up as King Ahasuerus, and my sisters were all Queen Esther. And you walked up on like the stage, the bima, it's called. You walk up on the stage there, and you walk up, and one by one, I'm so and so, and I'm so and so. Yeah, and the rabbi said to me, "And who are you?" And I knew exactly who I was, but for some reason, I just kind of took a pause and I looked out at the crowd, and I saw my parents looking, very, very intent, and I said, "I'm King David," and for whatever reason, everybody howled. They loved that this kid fucked up the king he was. And it got just a huge response. And then I walked off. My parents said, "No, you're King Ahasuerus." I go, "Yeah, I know." Like I knew. I don't know why I said what I said, but I knew it was going to get a laugh. I was 3 years old. I never forgot that. And my parents both looked so happy. That I did that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was one of the rare times I saw them laughing at the same time.
And how did you feel?
Great, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Hooked. But in 6th grade, I used to stay up late and watch, the Tonight Show or Saturday Night Live.
Who was doing the Tonight? Carson then?
It was the end of Carson. Yeah, towards the end of Carson. Yeah, and I also stay up and watch Letterman.
Oh God!
Which was, so first time I met Paul Schaefer. I mean, I watched him every night of my life for years and years and years as a child on up, and I couldn't believe it. He did when I had him on my show, and he was sitting at the keyboard, 8 feet away from me.
I saw it.
You saw? It was just, I had goosebumps the whole time. I watched it now. It was
just, we had him on, and our friend Steve Fink was awestruck as well. I mean, as he said this morning, imagine how many musicians this guy's been around.
Yep.
These are good people, Paul and Kathy.
Great, the nicest people. The nicest.
And I keep waiting for the wink, and there's no wink there.
None.
There are good people in the world.
Yes, we've done a bunch of charity events together, a few things, and he's just kind and gracious, and he's an icon and a musical and a genius. And when you talk to him, he's just a very sweet guy
and a great songwriter.
Yes.
And a great supporter.
Yes.
And you imagine doing that job. I mean, speaking of Hank Kingsley, you imagine doing that job night after night after night after night after night, and what that must get like.
33 years. Wow. Isn't that crazy? It's crazy.
That's who I should borrow money from. We talked on the phone, and it was just something because I said we were going out to. This show is called. Well, we change it hourly, but what's it called now?
It's always been really acting schmacting. We just always have something after it that we change.
Acting schmacting. What's keeping you acting schmacting? Do it afraid, and I think those are the two iterations that I know. And you and I we talked on the phone. I just said, have you ever had any bumpy times? Because there are people out there with their empty legal pads, comics, who are really gifted, who are afraid to move. And they're sitting in their little worried chair. And I said, have you had any bumps? I don't want to embarrass you. You can just tell me to go fuck myself. But I mean, you told me a little bit about you sleeping in your car.
Oh, yeah.
Period where you...
First of all, the bumps don't end. There's
tell me
always
about it.
Bump.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not a, if we didn't want any bumps, then we'd all would have, become accountants and, we'd get a.
I didn't want any bumps.
You didn't want any bumps?
No, I bought the whole thing. Maybe it's because I was a conservative Jew rather than a reform, but I bought the whole thing. I bought the myth that if you went to shul, if you read enough books, you read the Iliad, the Odyssey, and blah, 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 that by the end of the day, you just go, I've achieved happiness. It was the biggest delusion that I've ever had. Still grappling with it because I went, it's actually the opposite, Am I making any sense?
Well, I think the more you learn, the more you realize that all of it is often really difficult and a big crock of shit.
Yeah.
And that's so maybe having the blinders on maybe is the way to live your life.
So when had you had success before you started living in your car?
No, I had not. I moved to New York. I kept subletting different places. I couldn't find an apartment. And so I had this 1976 Dodge. It was my grandmother's car. It only had about.
I can actually see it.
It's really it was a great car, perfect for the city because if somebody hit you, you didn't really care.
Yeah.
It had maybe 27,000 miles on it, and the car was already 27 years old.
Yeah.
So my grandmother rode it to Moser Farms and back to get milk, and in Connecticut, and I parked the car on 76 between 2nd and 3rd on the Upper East Side, and I chose that block because there was a school right there, and the Upper East Side is typically pretty safe. So it was across the street from a school, and that's where I had to sleep because I couldn't find an apartment, certainly not one that I could afford. So I was doing stand-up at night. I hadn't gotten a day. I had a day job where I sold mailman uniforms. I basically would go post office to post office working for this company, and I would sell letter carriers their clothes that they needed to wear. And, and measuring the inseam of a mailman is not so much fun. But pretty good job. Made commission, not bad. Not a lot of Jews in the post office, by the way. So I slept in this car, and one morning I remember all these kids were like surrounded the car and they were shaking it, like rocking the car, And at first, obviously, I was terrified.
Wow.
And I realized it was just a bunch of smart ass 11-year-olds. But that was tough. But what's interesting is that at the time there were definitely. I remember thinking like, oh, this sucks. but I was 23 years old, so I also think I enjoyed the adventure of it.
Yeah.
You know, at that age, I kind of embraced it. You know, and that's obviously I wouldn't do as well with that today. I mean, 20 years later, I that would be devastating.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're sleeping in your car. But at that age, it felt I kind of embraced those bumps, and I often do allow a lot of things to roll off me, and I think, and sometimes the wrong things are not rolling off you. You know, there's something maybe someone, you know how like you go up, you have a great show, but you're fixated on that one joke that didn't work, or you're fixated on that one audience member that you couldn't quite crack.
That's me.
Yeah, and it's wrong to fixate on that thing.
It's absolutely wrong.
And you have to try to remind yourself not to do that.
Yeah.
And I think so many of us are guilty of that or victims of that, and we get in our own way. But it's always felt like, you know, everything really does happen for a reason. I moved out to LA for about a year, and I had in my 20s, and I had nothing going on out there at all. Nothing. Hung out with friends. I enjoyed myself. I wrote a lot. And as soon as I moved back to New York, I got my first TV job hosting a show in New York. And I remember being so devastated, like, oh, I'm leaving LA. I failed in LA. When I hadn't failed in LA, I got a lot done. I wrote a lot. It was successful. And as 2 weeks after I got back to New York, I got that job.
That should tell you something.
Meant to come back for that.
I totally believe in that. I believe there are places that you should be, and I believe that there are places you shouldn't be. I had never felt comfortable in Los Angeles. Well, first of all, I don't think it's very pretty. Mm-hmm. And second of all, and even though I rented near the beach, and it also seems that the topic of conversation is kind of limited.
It's show business.
It's all show business. What do you do? What are you doing now? What are you going to do then? What are the numbers? Uh-huh. And here, I mean, you might get somebody who talks about archaeology. Could happen.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what I want. You know,
you're in LA. You get pulled over for a speeding ticket. The cop, you know, has headshots. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
I got pulled over. I used to do a show years ago, Hill Street Blues. I played Judge Wachtel, and I got pulled over. When I would get pulled over at the first, I'm sober now, but I used to drink, and I got pulled over a number of times. And people, you know, there were guys who just say, "Oh, yeah. Hey, all right, get home. How far is home? All right, drive safe." Until one day, and this is how you figure out you're getting on. I got stopped downtown, and the guy went, "Hey, you know," and I wanted license and registration. And I just said, "Oh, you know, I was on Hill Street Blues." And how about a break? And he looked at me and he went, "Before my time."
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So I got myself a nice little ticket. So that's how you know you're. No, but I don't mean to denigrate the city. I grew up in San Francisco.
San Francisco, that's a great city.
It's a great city.
I mean, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Boston. They're different, but I love going to all those.
What part of the city do you live in now?
In Manhattan, in Greenwich Village.
Oh, you live down. You like it down there?
I do. I like it, but I love getting out of New York. I mean, I used to never want to leave the city at all. I always felt like I was going to miss something. Now, if I have a good reason to get out of Manhattan, I'm thrilled.
Were you in the blackout?
I was. It didn't affect me, though. You know what happened, though, that night? So Dave Chappelle is on Broadway right now.
Yes.
And his show, and Bill Burr was going to open for him that night. Bill Burr's a terrific stand-up comic. And because of the blackout, all the theaters went dark. So Chappelle and Bill Burr came on down to the Comedy Cellar, and they jumped on there. And it was great. Chappelle did like an hour and a half, and then he brought up Bill Burr, and it was just fun. So that was a fun outcome from the blackout.
So when's your next show?
On Tuesday.
Who you having?
There'll be 6 of us. So it'll be a bunch of different comics. Dan Natterman, who's very funny. A guy named Greg Rogel, very funny. Russ Maneve, very funny. Obviously they're all very funny. Jessica Curson, Lynn Coplitz. It's a great mix.
And how big is the audience?
Usually that club is about 230. I mean, clubs range in size, obviously, from 100 to 300. But I have a comedy club in Aruba that I set up. So I went to Aruba kind of by accident.
Why am I not in Aruba at your comedy club?
You should come down whenever you want, man.
Really?
Just bring a bunch of napkins with you.
We can do this from Aruba.
You totally could.
Yeah, we could, couldn't we?
Yeah, instead of the dorm room.
And then there'd
Do
be.
you have a dorm room for us?
I can find one we'll find one at
Sure,
the
we'll
University
come down.
of Aruba.
We only work in dorm
Then
rooms.
you'll have 300 people going, "Who's that guy?"
The moment you say, "Hey now," all the Arubans
now.
go, "Oh yes."
Oh yeah, CCC.
They'll say, Hopi Ball, Jeffrey Tambor. Masha Donkey.
Tell me, the story about your uncle.
Oh, geez. So I'm in Aruba.
Should I segue better?
You were fine.
Okay.
I didn't mind. So
There was no segue.
there was none.
Yeah, none.
None whatsoever. That's fine. We just slammed right into a brick wall.
Well,
That's fine.
that's what I mean. That's why you must tutor me at this. Am I doing okay?
You're great.
Really?
What the fuck is wrong with you? You're great.
Sound like my father.
Shit, it's ridiculous.
Okay.
It's fantastic. So I'm in Aruba at I set up this comedy club down there because I wanted to spend more time on this beautiful island. Because I was getting burnt out in New York. I'd finished some shows that I'd working on. I was fried. So I kept going there. And so I opened the club April of 2013. And I'm proud that it's the number one thing to do at night in Aruba, according to a lot of websites, whatever. So I'm down there. This is November of 2015. So it's 4 years ago. And doing the shows, everything's going great. And one of my sisters, my sister Abby, kept like trying to get in touch. Hey, can you talk? Hey, she's texting me. And I was busy. I was, whatever. I was either windsurfing or doing this or that. And then I was getting ready for the show that night. And again, she's kept, and I just kept ignoring the phone because I couldn't talk. I was just, I was doing stuff. She sends me an email saying that our uncle died. Our uncle Izzy died. And I remember I went, shit. Like that was exactly my reaction. I went, shit. Because I just felt bad. I figured it was probably a heart attack. He was about 78 or so. My dad's older brother. And so I went ahead and I called her. This is 45 minutes before I had to go on stage. And I picked up the phone and I called her and I said, "Oh, that sucks. What happened?" And she goes, "Well, they think he was murdered." And I have goosebumps right now as I said that. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, these are things you hear about, but they don't happen to you. They don't happen to your family, So I'm having as much of a conversation with her as I can, getting as many details as I can. And I went down to the showroom. I'm literally going on stage 8:30. This is now 8:05. So I told the other two comics what happened. One of them, just like a typical comic fashion, one of them was just stone-faced. It was like, "Oh, that stinks." Had nothing to say. The other one was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry," whatever. But it just seems surreal. So I go on stage and I was hosting the show. In the first 5 minutes, my uncle was killed in Middlebury, Connecticut. It was a pretty well-known thing. If you Google, you can see videos and stuff. And that's actually when it becomes really surreal because we have the same last name. And when they put his picture on, on the newscast and stuff like that, that's when you're like, it's jarring, to see that, to see the face, to hear the name being spoken.
Right.
So I go on stage and I said to the guy, I'm talking to the audience, and I say to the guy in the front row, and I did call my mother after I spoke to my sister. I called my mother, and I was very upset when I spoke to her, and she said, my mom's a classical pianist, and she said, you know what you have to do, you have to just go up there and just do what you do, just go do it, and that's what she didn't say. You have to fly home right now. She just said, get up there and do what you have to do. And so I'm on stage, and I said to the guy in the front row, I said, we're bullshitting. I said, "Oh, who you with? Your wife? Yeah. Where are you guys from?" He said, "Connecticut." And I kind of took just a beat, and I said, "Where? What part of Connecticut?" He goes, "Middlebury." A half hour after I find out my uncle's murdered in front of his house, a guy in the audience is from the same town, and nobody's from fucking Middlebury, Connecticut. No one's from there. Well, it's the You're not. You're from Hartford, or you're from Greenwich, you know. And I almost said, "Oh wow, did you kill my uncle?" But I just didn't. I just said, "Oh, I heard it's a nice place to live," and I just moved on. I just found out. So you have to, and I'm sure you've been in this boat in one way or another. You get some horrible news, some life-changing news, and you still have to go.
You have to go
perform.
on.
You have to go on, and you do it. You tune it out. You take that sadness and you turn it into something. I wasn't aggressive that night on stage, but theoretically, I could have become, not in a mean way, but in a funny, aggressive way, a little more at them, you know. But I couldn't believe it. Now, once the show was over, I went back up to my hotel room and I just started crying. I mean, I was just such a release, you know. But it was and then for the next few days, again, my parents said, "Don't come home, stay where you are." You know, they had to. It was a big investigation and all that. And the guy, it took almost 2 years, but he's in jail he got 40 years. The guy who killed him, and it was a guy who he knew, who he gave a job to. He gave him a place to live. He let him use his car. He'd known him for maybe 10 years, and the guy had been arrested 27 times with 8 felonies. I have no fucking idea how he was not in jail. But anyway, when those things happen, what are you going to do? Your choice is to just curl up and do nothing and just fall apart, or pick yourself up and do your thing. Do what you love to do and what you're meant to do. I mean, it was a very different experience that night. I mean, I was totally I was removed from myself, you know.
Absolutely.
You're sort of going on autopilot in some way.
Disassociation.
Yes. But the fact that guy was from the town, that was...
There are no coincidences.
None.
Yeah. And I believed it when I was a little kid, and I lost it, and now I believe it again because I said there are no coincidences. I learned when my brother died, I got a call the night before, and they said, "He's gone, Larry's gone." And I had booked a commercial the very next day, and I called him and I said, "I'm out. I'm on a plane. My brother passed away." And they said, oh my God, you've got to come. I mean, is there any way we can't replace you? And we'll shoot you out first thing in the morning, and we'll take care of you, and we'll get you on that plane. And please, just anything you want. We were just, oh God, please, please, please. And I went, okay, so you got my back, right? And he goes, yeah, oh God, yes, thank you. Anyway, long story short, this is my version of your story, what I learned. It's a tough lesson. They shot me out, and then I waited around, and I said, is somebody going to drive me to the airport? And they had completely forgotten.
Wow.
Yeah. And I went, never forget this. That in the end, you got to take care of yourself.
Yes.
It's not quite no one cares, because that's a little too dark even for us Jews. But it's adjacent.
Yes.
You got to take care of yourself.
People have their own worries, their own concerns, their own egos, their own everything.
Yeah.
And you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah. It's especially in this business. You think, people... Either people care or they don't care or whatever. God,
was your brother ill? Was it unexpected?
Well, you were so honest with me. I'll be so honest with you. My brother Larry was my hero. He was an Eagle Scout and president of the congregation, and the good Jew. He was the good Jew. I was the bad Jew, and I was the Jew who was thrown out of Hebrew school because I asked if there was a God, and the teacher said, "Get out." That was my answer.
You would also be known then as the fun Jew.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so some jerk, my brother was alcoholic. He grew to be 300 pounds. He's such a good guy. There was a lot of stuff that happened. I mean, my parents thought he was at Princeton. He actually wasn't at Princeton. He was nowhere. It was just crazy. And some fool told my parents the next time he comes over for a drink, because they lived in Walnut Creek and my brother lived in Martinez, so he would drive. I'm wondering if my relatives are listening to this. Oh, well, anyway. He would drop off for a drink. And they said, next time he comes for a drink, slam the door in his face. Yeah. And so they did. And they loved him. I mean, he was firstborn and good Jew, and here we go. And Eagle Scout. No, Order of the Arrow. I mean, those are the elite of the elite. And my hero, by the way, my big hero. Anyway, a month later, he died.
Wow.
And so that was sew up time. My dad just quit. He just sewed it up and quit. And my mom went into her difficulties. How did we get on this?
We're talking about relatives who croaked, uncles and brothers.
Now, also, there's a question we like to ask on the program. Again, if you have not seen our friend's work, you must see it on
Comedy Central.
Comedy Central. State of the art, and someday I shall be as liquid and smooth as you. But one can tell from your eyes, you have the kindest eyes I've seen.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and to be 30 and still have these kind eyes is great. You did a thing, and we, as I told you on the phone, part of this acting schmacking thing is I really could care less that you become a good actor or you get a pilot. And that's not why I want you to listen to the podcast. But I talk to so many people who have that legal pad in their desks and they haven't gone to it for their stand-up comedy or their legal. What are you doing?
I'm doing the tech stuff here.
Oh, I thought you were like, I don't know what you were doing.
Look at the screen here.
I thought you were going to sneeze on me.
I might.
Anyway, or that first draft of a script or that audition, and those people are just sitting in their worried, scared chairs, afraid to move. And yet you've done something that I did not know about. I caught in your bio, and you don't go on and on about it, which I find is interesting. But you made, financed, and brought together your own film.
Oh yeah.
How'd that go?
It went. Fortunately, it went well. I had this idea to do. I in a roundabout way, I ended up producing this a Latino comedy tour. Like I had 35, 40 different stand-up comics, and we toured around different parts of America, and it was great. It was really successful. It was really fun, and there were three of the comedians who had all started together in New York. They were sort of the pioneers of the New York comedy scene. And I had this idea to do this film, and I kind of pitched to a couple people, and no one really seemed interested. And I was like, well, no, I think this will be interesting, and I think it'll do well. So I had a bunch of credit cards, and I made this movie called The Latin Legends of Comedy. And in the middle of making the movie, we already shot, where we begun filming, and in the middle of it, I get an email from a friend of mine, and it was an article that said that 97 to 98% of all movies that are made don't get sold. That's what this guy emailed me. I immediately picked up the phone and I said, why the fuck are you emailing this to me? I'm in the middle of making a movie. I maxed out 6 credit cards. Why would you do this? Mm-hmm. He's like, well, I thought it was interesting. It's not interesting. It's useless.
It's so passive aggressive.
It's unreal, all these people with their it's petty, and a lot of people want to see you fail.
Absolutely. What's that called? Schadenfreude or whatever? There's
that Schadenfreude?
Yeah,
I've heard the word. I don't know what it means. It means people who send you stupid emails. Is that
no? It's
when you enjoy other people's misfortune.
Yeah. Like if they get a bad review, you go.
Yeah. Schadenfreude. Yeah.
Schadenfreude. Yeah.
Terrible. I had an ex-girlfriend that was very happy once. Yeah, whatever.
But she's not like Tiffany.
No, she's not like sweet Tiffany. Tiffany, if you're listening, baby, no one's like you. No one's like you, Tiffany.
So you maxed out.
So I maxed out the cards, and I made the film, And it was incredible because I was a film major in college, but still majoring in something and actually doing it are really often two very different things, because when I'm in college, my parents were kind enough and able to pay for my school. And this was me with my own money, putting it all on the line, making this project where, my parents, the only expectation was, okay, we're going to spend money for this. You just have to graduate. But when you're making a movie, it's like, okay, I'm putting all my money into this. Now I have to try to get my money back.
$1 million?
That's the goal. Well, not quite, but it was
up there.
It was close. So it was insane. So I made this movie, and any time that I didn't know, if I didn't have the answer for something, I managed this. So I just said, this will come. I'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. And within 24 hours, every obstacle that was coming in front of me, it was able to be resolved. It was just remarkable. Either I'd have a conversation with somebody where my question was answered, or I just found out information online. I mean, I did the work, but I realized, okay, if you just do the work, you'll solve your problems. You'll get the answers you need. So made this film, got it in a few different film festivals, and all I cared about the film festival, I did not care about winning any awards. With these film festivals, a lot of times you see the same filmmakers at every festival. It was like our group was the same group of guys were hitting every festival that year, men and women. And one guy, he won awards at every festival. His movie always won the best picture, this or that, whatever. And I remember we're talking about I actually talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I never sold that fucking movie. He won every award, but he couldn't sell it, and he wanted to. He wanted to get his money back. And all I cared about at these festivals was hopefully getting good reviews in the paper, and that was really it. And having people show up for screenings, but it really was the reviews, because I knew that would help. So I was at the Palm Beach Film Festival in Florida, and I remember all these promo materials for all these different films. Big posters and this. They had marketing teams that came to these festivals. I'm like, where the fuck are these people getting this money to spend on these independent films? So I was sitting in the hotel office. The woman let me use the office equipment, and I was like hand cutting. I was photocopying these horrible black and white posters I had to promote my movie, and hand cutting them with scissors, and they looked terrible. I mean, imagine like a big, beautiful, full color, 6-foot poster, and then you have my shitty 8x10 black and white flyer. It was terrible. I almost didn't even put them out where all the other films were. And whatever, did it, put them out. Festival went well, got some good press, whatever. I get a call a week later. A guy says to me, he says, "Hey, I was at the Palm Beach Film Festival, and I'm in LA. I work over at Fox. Can you send me a copy of your movie?" I said, "Yeah, I'd be happy to. Sure. We had a screening at the festival. He goes, No. I picked up one of your flyers. I thought it looked interesting." So he picked up this shitty, handmade, Drek-looking 8x10 black and white thing, and from that he was just curious about the movie. Maybe he thought it seemed clunky and interesting. Mm-hmm. So I sent him the thing. A week later, he called me up. I flew out. I went by myself. They made an offer for the movie, and I actually turned it down because I knew I had a big festival in New York, and I just felt like, let me just see what else. I had a feeling, and I got 2 other offers. I got one from Paramount, and one from Warner Brothers, but the best one was the first one, and they were really enthusiastic about it as well, which made me feel good. So I managed to I got my money back and a little more. And it was a very satisfying experience. Everything that I've ever done, and I said this to Teresa earlier, your assistant, everything I've done, every video that's on YouTube, I fucking hate all of them. And everything I look at, I would like to redo and do differently. I can't stand watching myself. The movie, I would do differently. I'd want the outcome to be the same, but I would approach things a little differently because you have that knowledge now. But I mean, I'm really incredibly grateful that I was able to sell it and that I didn't have to go bankrupt over it. Yeah. This is what would have happened. But the key is there's always a solution to every problem. Absolutely. There's always a way to get something done. You can always achieve your goal. It might not, be, A to B to C, but you can always get things done. And like, I have friends that are like work in finance and law that really more than anything want to be writers. And I say, well, write when you're not in your office, or maybe when you are in your office. Just go for it. Just go for it. You have nothing to lose. A kid the other night, there's a kid named Josh Johnson. He's a comedian. He works on the Daily Show. Josh Johnson is going to be I think he's going to be a huge star. A young comic. He's great. And we worked together last night. He was on a taping of the Comedy Central show. And beforehand, and he said to me, and he was really nervous about this and that. And I just said to him, I said, hey, listen, we're not flying helicopters in Iraq. We're choosing to get on stage and doing what we love. This audience is here to enjoy you. You have the goods. Just go have fun. Just go enjoy yourself, And he went up and he was great. But I always think that we're not flying a helicopter in the Middle East. You know what I mean? It's okay. Everything will be fine. What's the worst? That you do a joke and no one laughs? So what?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
And I see so many people just so anxious and pining away. I'm like, come on, man.
I'm doing I'm not going to tell you where it is, but it looks like I'm doing a workshop in the fall, and I want to get, I want to get writers like your friend last night who are afraid to make that next move. I usually have just actors in it. But this year, I used to teach at the South by Southwest. And this year I want to have actors, writers, and directors in the room. And I want the writers to act. And I want the actors to write. And I want the directors to act. And it's a workshop of creativity. And it's almost like what are you doing?
Can you get closer to the mic?
Oh, I thought you were saying point to him to get to him to the class. He's fine. And so what do you think of that idea?
I love it. I think it's brilliant. It's a great idea.
I want you to spread the word once I get going.
No problem.
Really?
Happy to. It's a
and
great
I just
idea.
thought, get young comics in there, and just have them stand up and just with that fucking legal pad, because half of the problem is inertia.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. A fear causes.
Will you help me
inertia.
spread the word?
Absolutely.
Cool.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, I have a workshop. I don't give a shit if you get a pilot. I don't want you to get. I think I might have told you on the phone. I told one guy during pilot season. I said, I don't really care that you get a pilot. I've done pilots, and that's fine. I would actually, why don't you be a pilot? I would be more impressed. Do you know that he became a pilot?
Really?
Yeah, and a fine director. So I'm not quite sure one didn't free him from the other, But I'm so sick of seeing these young kids sitting at home in their worry chairs, waiting for the agent's 6 o'clock call list.
Yeah.
Where they go, we're looking, just hang in there, buddy, for 8 lines on a pilot, and you want to go, my friend, let me just save you 30 years.
Yeah.
That ain't it.
Right.
And
the amount of energy people expend and waste just in waiting and being afraid
and worrying.
It is so useless. I always, the most interesting people to me are people who are, with all due respect to anyone in their 20s who's listening, but the most interesting people are people who are older. I always would rather talk to somebody older than me, because they have life experience and they have interest. And I think of so much. I mean, I got a lot done in my 20s, but still, I also wasted a lot of time.
Oh, I wasted. I wasted. I just sat there, Actually, no. You know what happened at the very, very, very beginning? I just didn't give a shit. And I walked in and I nailed everything because I just didn't care. I actually walked into a commercial audition for the wrong thing. I was in the wrong place. And I talked them into making the commercial about me because I just didn't give a shit.
That's great.
And because I brought my confidence in the room.
And it was a Maybelline
Yeah,
commercial.
that's what was so odd.
Looking for a 22-year-old blonde.
I still have this makeup. It is wonderful. And
what's the longest stretch you had since you did Three's Company?
Yeah.
What's the longest period you had where you were not working, doing a play, a show, a pilot?
Not long.
Not long. That's incredible.
No. And for the last 7 years, with Arrested and then Transparent, I was away for 7 years. And now that I'm home, and we were just talking before you came on, I was just saying, I have no idea what to do. And I think this is God's little way of saying, hey, pal, you need to be, this is where you need to be. And I made a meatloaf the other night that was laughable. Because what is it called? Panko? Panko?
It's panko, yeah.
Panko crusted
Don't
meatloaf.
use panko because it's not
Panko.
food.
I put not enough panko in it, so it looked like there was fields out there. But they went, Dad, lovely. It had no shape. It had nothing. You had to literally say with a card, "This is meatloaf." But they're getting it. So I'm not quite understanding what this is. And then he comes to me and says, "Do you want to do a podcast?" And I say, "Sure." What is a podcast? But then it leads me to Susan Schaefer, who leads me to Paul Schaefer, and Susan Schaefer goes, "You have to talk to you. You know, you are fantastic. I call you." Actually, my first call with you, I said he did. This is to tell you about me. I said he doesn't like me.
You really thought that?
Yeah.
With who, Paul?
Really?
No, when we
Oh,
talked,
with
First
Ray.
call that you and I had together.
I said, he doesn't like me.
Really? Why did you think that?
I don't know. Because I'm me.
That's his story.
But
Well, that's what we were going to talk about.
did I say something? But was I rude to you or anything?
No, you were very efficient. And I just took that as, he did. And then when we talked the other day, we fell in love, And
It's so funny. I probably said to myself that first call, I probably thought, oh, Jeffrey's got a million other things to do, so let's just, we'll get to
I'm
whatever.
sure you did. But then
so
Jeffrey,
funny.
with his story, went home. Oh, he hates me. So, oh gosh, where were we? So
Your story.
my story. One of the things that we've been talking about, and we go from podcast to podcast, is what's your story about? Because at one point we were going to call this acting schmacting, what's keeping you, and then we were going to call it acting schmacting, do it afraid.
Something like that,
Yeah, and then now we're calling it. What are we calling it?
I think it's just acting schmacting. And each talk seems to change and have its own theme.
Yeah.
So we'll just go with that.
All right. So, acting
no one's
schmacting,
writing,
what's
so
your
it's fine.
story? My story was my mom used to say in Yiddish, "Stickdreck."
What does that mean?
You're a piece of shit.
Oh.
She would say, "You're Stickdreck. You've always been Stickdreck. You'll always be Stickdreck," covering all the bases.
Yeah, sure.
And so that kind of was my story. That was, yes, I will now go out in the world and be Stickdreck. And so that's always the thing that throws me. So as they hand me a Golden Globe, I go, probably a tight race. Probably made it by one. Let's check if it's really Jeffrey Tabor or not Jerry Tabor. It was a thing.
No, I think the "I'm not good enough." I think that is very much
Everybody
a
has
stand-up comics, in particular. The "I'm not." I think I've always thought that I'm good enough, and then you keep meeting people that want to chip away at you, either because for whatever reason, maybe because they don't think they're good enough and want to bring you down a few pegs. That happens all the time.
I listen to a lot of podcasts with comedians, and they all seem to have that common, what makes them get up there and get on stage to need that accolade.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
But
but it's interesting because you're getting this affirmation from a room full of strangers, and that was for me. That was all I needed for a very long time.
Started
Yeah.
at 3.
Yeah, sure.
That laugh.
Yeah, that you get that laugh, and you feel great, and you feel validated, and you feel important, and you feel special, and then it became more important for me. I still want to have that, but to have that thing with that other person, in this case, let's say Tiffany or whomever.
She's turned this off by now.
Yeah, she's a dirty, horrible human. But that becomes, even though you've been married for a long time, you have that special person that their affirmation means, I'm going to say, even more than all those people who watch you from a distance, right?
It's true. But it takes you a while to get there.
Yes.
And it's a real wake up call. I mean, it's a real, you go, oh gosh, Yeah, it's I'm not good enough. That's on a lot of people's. It's quite common. What's your other story that gets you to make a film?
I can do anything.
Yeah,
that's the other story. I can do anything. I really, that's one thing that I am proud of, and I don't usually sit around and pat myself on the back, but there's a lot of comics who said to me, they're like, I don't know how you do what you do. I mean, I don't know how you get things done. How do you know how you get? Because there's lots of different projects that I've gotten off the ground that I've done, and that I've done pretty well. And even saying that out loud is like, you feel a little. I sound like an asshole for saying that, but it is what it is. So it's just a different skill set, and I firmly believe that if you ask me to do something, I will always figure out a way on how to get it done.
People in your field and at your young age get bitter. There's a bitterness,
quite a bit. Yes.
Cynicism, if you will,
yep.
A closure of the spirit. But your eyes are so warm, and your spirit is so warm. It's very affecting.
Oh, thank you.
So I can tell that there's more coming from you.
Thank you so much.
You've really affected me this morning, because I went, it's exactly what I wanted to hear, and this is what I've always wanted this podcast to be. Is someone of our guest's intelligence, saying, hey, this is what I did, and just get the next thing done, next action, and the worry won't help you. You think it will, but it won't, So my father was wrong and you were right. And Tiffany is dancing the horror in Lower Manhattan. Is there anything you want to say? Anything that we didn't get to?
Your words are very kind, and I'm flattered.
I'm just kind as shit. There's just no doubt about it. But there are other making of your film. How do you prepare? Oh yeah, I do want to ask you one thing. So, okay. So there's a legal pad. You've got it, and how many cups of coffee do you have?
I don't drink coffee. I've never liked the taste of coffee, ice cream, coffee, yogurt. None of it. I love the smell of coffee beans. Never got into coffee.
Do you smoke?
No.
Do you do drugs?
No. I used to smoke pot. No, never. I'll drink a little bit. I went through. You said you don't drink anymore. You did or you don't?
I'm 18 years sober. Yeah.
Oh wow. I went through a couple periods where I didn't drink for 2-year stretches. But just because I just felt like I just wanted to kind of just feel healthy, and I don't know.
Are you healthy?
I try to be, yeah.
Yeah.
I just lost like 30 pounds, but it goes up and down, so yeah.
Jewish.
Yeah.
Very Jewish.
Yeah. I mean, I love food.
There should be a Jewish Weight Watchers. I don't know why. Wouldn't it be funny? Hello. Did you count your points?
Does it have to be so stereotypical?
But so the legal pad is there. What do you do? And I can cut this, so don't worry about it, because it's the most boring thing. But I'm working with a project right now, and sorry,
It's okay.
that first step, that very first scrawl, is the hardest fucking thing. Once you do that, you're there. You go, good, I'm on paper. I can cross out now and everything like that. But that first step, is there any wisdom you can throw our way?
I think the first step is usually the hardest, for sure. And once it's fine. I did this on a plane last week. There's something I'm trying to flesh out, and I just started writing, and I just made it into just a brainstorming session, and just kept nonstop, just writing and writing and writing, almost just stream of consciousness, and whatever just fell out of my head and out of my fingertips. And that to me that worked, because there's a lot of times where if I'm trying to get from A to B, I'll just kind of write anything that's like even topic adjacent, you know what I mean? Just to sort of, and then afterwards I'll look at it and go, this kind of fell out of my mouth, and that even though that has nothing to do with that, it can still kind of work around. I don't know if I'm explaining this well.
You're explaining it exactly right. Now, here's what I do. I talk to myself, and as I'm writing or as I'm in the car or something like that, I'll take this phone that we're looking at right now, and I'll leave messages, and I'll write literally chapters, rips passing or blah, 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 blah. But when I go to write, I can't get that. I mean, I can transcribe that,
Right.
but I can't get it.
Do you find, though, if you're doing voice messages, if you're leaving yourself voice memos, are you getting, when you do it that way, is that device of just speaking it versus writing it, are you getting the outcome that you want?
When I speak
When
it.
you speak it.
When I speak it, yeah.
So maybe that's fair. I mean, even if you're not physically writing something, if you're getting the thoughts out.
Why? I wonder, what is it? Does it go to another part of your brain?
I believe it does. I do think that there's something about your brain, because I remember when I was a kid and I would write things, I would have just a sheet of paper and a pen, and I'd start writing, and then I'd start filling things in on the sides of, on the margin and whatever, because my brain was going so fast. I was just trying to quickly get it all out. And I think that maybe if it comes to typing something, I actually think it slows you down a few steps.
Yeah.
I really think that's what it is.
And it will actually affect your word choice.
Yes, 1,000%.
Yeah.
I hate my sister, who's a writer and a journalist and an author, and she's great. She just always writes on a laptop, and I can't. I do it when I have to, if it's a script or something, but I don't like it. I'd much rather do like a speech to text thing, or just do memos and and transcribe it later, for sure.
You are welcome here anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. We should
love
hang.
you.
I like you. You guys are good guys.
We love you.
When are you doing the show next? When are you recording it?
We're shooting Tuesday, Wednesday, and then there's just regular shows on Friday, Saturday. We film every Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
At the Comedy Cellar.
At the Comedy Cellar, yeah.
I live in Hoboken. I'd like to come out.
Anytime you want.
And you'll help me and get the word out on my class?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Is it hard getting in there? I've never been in
The Cellar?
Yeah.
Every night of the week, they have 3 rooms now.
Right.
One in McDougal, and then 2 on West 3rd. The biggest one is on West 3rd, and there's a smaller one.
That's the one at the
upstairs.
beginning of like the Louis show.
That's the one
right?
at McDougal.
That's
the outside,
McDougal?
yes. And our show on Comedy Central, the exterior is also on McDougal, but we shoot in the bigger room on West 3rd.
West 3rd. Okay.
Is it packed?
Every night of the week, this club is packed. On Friday,
popular.
1,100, 1,200 seats between the 3 rooms.
Wow.
Packed.
You
It's unreal.
Is it kind of like a lineup place, or you just got to buy tickets?
You buy it online, but
Okay.
let me know. I mean, I'll make sure that,
Thanks.
And anyone else who's listening out there, you have to go online and try to get a reservation. But for everybody in this room, you're all set. But what's incredible, the reason I think it's such a phenomenon is not just, where it's located in the village. That's foot traffic, whatever. It's because even when there are people on the show that aren't famous, they're outstanding comedians. They
And
really
it's
are.
known that if they're there, they're good.
They're good. Yes. They're like, it's funny. There's a comic, Mike Vecchione, I've worked with a million times. He's outstanding. And, and to me, I think he should be a household name. He's just a great comic, Ted Alexandro. I think I mentioned Jessica Curson. All these people that if you see them, you'll love them, And then you also have people that are, legitimate great comics and who are also very well known who stop by. Dave Chappelle, Ray Romano, Amy Schumer. Those they're there on a
Amy Schumer comes by?
Oh yeah. There was a Tuesday night where on one show on a Tuesday on a $14 ticket, everybody was a guest set. It was all unexpected. But it was Dave Attell, Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock,
Jesus.
Aziz Ansari, Dave Chappelle, and Schumer.
My God.
6 of them on one show for that one audience. $14. People lost their fucking minds. They couldn't believe it. Was just one explosion after the other. We have a special guest about Dave Chappelle, and people would go crazy, crazy. And the problem is, I think a lot of times a comic can't top that initial explosion.
Yeah.
You can't, especially if they're working on new material. So a comic often has to diffuse the expectation, particularly if Chris Rock goes on stage with a legal pad and they all just went apeshit. It's kind of tough. The best guy, you mentioned him earlier when we were talking, was Robin Williams. When he stopped by the Comedy Cellar, he was so kind to all the like a lot of comics they want to sit there and just sort of hold court and just be listened to, and they kind of want to give lectures to all the other comics. And Robin really asked everybody about themselves, and he was so gracious and just sweet. And that's the only time I met him. And I always heard just great stories about him. And when he went on stage again, it was like
You must have gone crazy.
Everybody just jumped up, and it's a tiny room too.
Yeah.
So for people, it was just electrifying. It was so exciting, you know. And again, it's hard to top that explosion, you know.
Yeah.
But it's cool just to be in the room and hear that. Is just.
Did you have heroes?
Well, my stand-up heroes were, when I was a kid, it was Gary Shandling. I love Woody Allen's stand-up. I always used to watch Letterman. Eddie Murphy, who, it's interesting. I think if you rewatch his stand-up, if he was doing that now for the first time, I don't know how it would fly, but he was just, I mean, he was 22. I mean, he was fearless. Yeah. So there was, you know, there's also a lot of comics who I can recognize. It's funny, a lot of the PAs on the TV show, they say to me, do you have any advice you can? And I say, you know what's actually really important? You need to recognize when someone is good, even if they're not your cup of tea. So there's a lot of comics who are really good comics, but they don't really speak to me. Like, I don't really connect with them, but I can still tell they're really good, and they're really, you know, look, everybody who's on the TV show isn't someone who I necessarily am a huge fan of, but I can still tell they're all really good.
It's like musicians.
Same thing. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's, and I think that's a really important trait, because a lot of times people think, well, it's only funny if I think it's funny. No. You should have to recognize that it's good even if you don't like it.
That's very wise what you're saying.
Oh, well,
you'd be a good teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I would enjoy being a teacher at some point.
Yeah. Talk to Tiffany.
I will. I'll see what she wants to do.
And tell her I said hi.
I certainly will. Maybe you'll come into the city. You can meet our lovely Tiffany.
It's been one of the really, really most wonderful podcasts we have. This is what I've been thinking of. And this gentleman.
Get this room all year round.
We'll get another room, but this is fine. You know, we'll get a room less OCD. Because
we need a bed.
There's a real sickness here.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Really.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for teaching us.
Love being here.